Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me in our discussion about Adulting 101 Life Lessons from Aggretsuko. This panel is intended for Otakon 2020, held on August 1st, 2020. Let me start by doing a quick introduction of myself. My name is Yvonne. You can find me on YouTube as Nekoichigo19. And I actually heard about Aggretsuko from two separate friends who said that I was Aggretsuko in real life. So obviously I looked it up and I absolutely fell in love with it. As a healthcare consultant, the challenges that Retsuko faces is very relatable to me. And I also have a background in organizational behavior and communication studies. So I used that viewpoint to do my analysis during the presentation. This is just a standard disclaimer. This presentation is for educational purposes. I'm not getting any profit from it. Aggretsuko, Aggressive Retsuko, and all other titles are the properties of their respective owners, and the opinions expressed during this presentation solely belong to me. And again, standard ground rules. Let's just be nice to everyone else in this presentation and don't share personal identifying information, don't share any spoilers, and have fun. I will be keeping track of everyone's comments throughout the presentation and we can discuss afterwards. For today's agenda, I'll start by reviewing the background and timeline leading up to Aggretsuko, and then I'll go more in depth into the four themes of life lessons: work, relationships, social media, and self-awareness. And finally, there will be an interactive Q&A time at the end of the presentation. And so this will cover seasons 1 and 2 of Aggretsuko, the English dub, which is the one I watched, while minimizing any spoilers. It's not a comprehensive analysis, but certainly a starting point for discussion. First, I'll provide some background context leading up to Aggretsuko. From Hello Kitty to Aggretsuko. Since Hello Kitty debuted in 1974, Sanrio has introduced a line of 40-plus adorable characters with distinct personalities. Most recently, Sanrio has incorporated the concepts of Kimo Kawaii, which is gross, creepy cute, with the sassy salmon fillet Kirimi-chan, lazy egg Gudetama, and raging red panda Aggretsuko. This transition from the expressionless Hello Kitty, who notably lacks a mouth, to these very expressive characters has followed the original Sanrio consumers as they grew from being children to adults, keeping them engaged with Sanrio. Understandably, after 42 years of pent-up feelings, it's no wonder that Retsuko needs to unleash her rage. In the shoujo tradition, the protagonist is expected to always maintain a bright, cheery demeanor and act like everything is okay, even when it's not. It echoes an overall societal belief that showing your feelings is a sign of weakness. Think Maron from Kamikaze Kaitojin, Madoka from Puella Magi Madoka Magica, and Toru from Fruits Basket as a few examples. As society becomes more open about sharing our feelings, including the negative, our anime and manga have as well. Moving on from the shoujo and maho shoujo series, here are some examples of slice-of-life anime that's relatable for older fans. This is the seinen genre officially, but I like to call it the office lady genre. And these examples include Servant ex Service, detailing government work, Bakoko Zake, talking about exquisite food displays, and also Wodakoi's hilarious misunderstandings between otaku co-workers. Alongside Aggretsuko, these anime have kept me sane as an OL myself. Here's some background information on Aggretsuko. It's produced by Sanrio and Netflix. It's an original Netflix animation. The studio is Fanworks, which is also known for numerous children and character animations, such as Sumiko Gurashi and Gakatsu, as well as Ani ni Sukeru Kusuri wa Nai. Aggretsuko was initially released on April 20th, 2018. It's directed by Retsuko with character design by Yeti. There are currently 2 seasons on Netflix, which both have 10 episodes of 15 minutes each, and there's one OVA that's 22 minutes long, and it takes place between seasons 1 and 2. It's called Aggretsuko, We Wish You a Metal Christmas. Season 3 has not been confirmed yet, but we're really hoping that there is additional season. And there's also the original Aggressive Retsuko series that aired from 2016 to 2018, and it features mainly the same characters. It's 100 episodes, 1 minute each, and I actually went through all of the episodes after I finished watching Aggretsuko because I just wanted to consume more of Retsuko and her coworkers' entertaining stories. And in terms of other background information, Aggretsuko has been categorized as music, slice of life, and comedy. It's currently ranked number 947 on my anime list, and it's rated PG-13, mostly due to language and some adult content. Now for the good part, life lessons. Let's start with work, which is the most obvious theme. Retsuko exhibits all the signs of burnout. She doesn't want to go to work, she's tired and unfocused at work, she doesn't want to talk to her coworkers, she has a very cynical view of her coworkers, she gets triggered frequently, which shows a lack of emotional regulation, she often thinks of quitting her job, the list goes on. So how did it get this bad? Her busy administrative work is compounded by her toxic work environment. Even though she's an accountant, she's often asked to prepare tea for her misogynist boss, who's literally a pig, who insists that's part of her job duties. She spends a lot of time managing paperwork and filling in for or helping her coworkers. In season 2, she's responsible for training the new guy Anai, who's a dog, and gets voluntold to manage her department's festival preparation. All of this happens in real life, especially at the entry level. The key is how to deal with it. Her workload is impossible and results in her staying late after work, while usually her coworkers leave right on time. She's rarely given the option to say no, as her boss and coworkers pile on additional work without asking if she has bandwidth. In season 2, we start to see strategies for dealing with this workload. Her boss points out that Retsuko needs to set limits for herself, which is totally ironic, considering that he's part of the problem. Haida, Retsuko senpai, and a hyena, tells Anai that he should be helping Retsuko with her workload instead of taking it easy. You need to recognize how the work is distributed within your team. Unfortunately, you'll most likely encounter slackers at your job. You have the power to say no to things that don't benefit you professionally, and you need to be realistic about how long it'll take to complete your work. One last resort strategy if you're overworked and not feeling supported is just to respond more slowly to requests, and or say that it'll be a significant amount of time before you can complete the request, and suggest someone else could do it sooner. That leads to asserting yourself. Retsuko starts to gain confidence and pushes back on her coworkers and boss throughout the series. You need to communicate when you're having a problem and confront it head on. While death metal karaoke is a good short-term solution for stress relief, privately venting isn't going to make the problem go away. Speaking of which, Retsuko gets called out for mistakes all the time. Sometimes they're not even her fault. Even though it may be frustrating and not always presented constructively, it's a learning opportunity, and just remember to do better next time. You should also provide constructive feedback to other people so they can learn. Likewise, you know how there's a saying that everyone wants to take credit, but no one will take the blame? There's no need to harp on people's mistakes after you've given them feedback, but definitely give them timely praise when they deserve it. Kubai, the gossipy mother hippo, excels at giving praise, which is a season 2 alert. On the same note, expressing appreciation or showing gratitude is an easy and effective way to strengthen your relationships. You can never say thanks too much. By the way, Kubai is also one of the coworkers who leaves on time. As Retsuko learns in season 2, Kubai has to balance a lot of things as a working mother, so she can't afford to leave work late. Retsuko has allowed her job to dominate her life because she's accommodating to her coworkers and doesn't have excuses to run out the door. We'll talk more about self-care later. Networking is a big one. As they say, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Networking successfully will position you to advance in your career more quickly, improves collaboration with teammates by getting to know them personally, could provide you with inside knowledge, and so on. Retsuko actively chats with her coworkers in the accounting department, which is formal networking, and through outside work events such as yoga, a singles mixer, and team gatherings, which is informal networking. Another key aspect of networking is meeting the right people, and titles don't necessarily reflect organizational power. Washimi, who's an executive assistant and an eagle, and Retsuko's friend, strongly influences her boss's decisions for the company. Finally, there are times when you may be overwhelmed by a situation, and on the verge of saying something you regret, like I quit. In those situations, you need to take a pause, follow Retsuko's example, and do some death metal singing in the bathroom. Next, we'll talk about relationships. Relationships are another significant theme. I've grouped them into 5 categories, with yourself to be discussed later. Retsuko has her share of difficult coworkers. It seems like they're all finding ways to get out of doing work while she's just trying to stay afloat and maintain some level of sanity. They are characters who suck up to the boss and end up redirecting work to Retsuko. Kubai seems to spend all of her time chatting instead of working. Most challenging is having bad bosses and managers who micromanage Retsuko and constantly belittle her. As I discussed in the work theme, there are many strategies to address workload issues. Additionally, it's important to understand the other person's perspective. In Season 2, we learn more about Retsuko's boss's backstory and how his tough love management style is meant to make his team more capable. On a more personal level, Retsuko has different groups of friends that she hangs out with. I classify them into 2 groups, the takers and the mutually beneficial. For example, think of Puko, who's a cat and Retsuko's childhood friend, and Tsunoda, a deer who is one of Retsuko's co-workers, known for sucking up to the boss, and she's a social media influencer. While both of them share helpful advice and perspectives with Retsuko, Puko about being an entrepreneur and Tsunoda about social media, they're clearly motivated by their own self-interest, and Retsuko gives more than she receives in these friendships. On the other hand, Washimi and Gori, who's a gorilla and a marketing director from Retsuko's company, always demonstrate concern for Retsuko's well-being, and are some of the few characters who know about Retsuko's death metal karaoke. Next, we get to meet Retsuko's mom in Season 2. She believes that Retsuko will be best off getting married and is intent on matchmaking her. That's her way of making sure that Retsuko will be provided for when she's no longer around. As a note, in Japanese culture, women putting family before the career is still the prevalent mindset. Retsuko acknowledges her mom's wishes, but also demonstrates that she can be independent, for instance by learning how to drive. Speaking of matchmaking, Retsuko navigates her way through the ups and downs of romantic relationships throughout the series. To avoid any spoilers, I'll keep it general and just say that you should know what you're looking for and what you're willing to give. You shouldn't force a connection, but rather wait for the right person to come along. So let's move on to social media. Social media is an entertaining source of comedy in Aggretsuko. There's an ongoing dynamic between Feneko, who's a fennec fox and Retsuko's co-worker, and Tsunoda, where Feneko spends all of her free time monitoring Tsunoda's and others' Instagrams and passing judgments. Meanwhile, Tsunoda spends all of her free time posting stage photos on Instagram and making her life look a lot more glamorous than it actually is. Social media is the main plot point in the Christmas OVA, where Retsuko becomes obsessed with receiving validation from her Instagram, and when she's stuck at work, she makes her convenience store dinner look like she's eating at a fancy restaurant. Thankfully, this obsession is just a temporary phase. A more technical point is that you should always be mindful of your social media settings. Feneko immediately notices when Tsunoda tags Retsuko in a post and gets jealous. She's also capable of identifying Retsuko's location just based off pictures. This is common sense, but make sure that people are agreeable with getting tagged on social media and remove tags that you're not comfortable with. For location settings, some people enjoy broadcasting where they've been, while others like to limit what's shared publicly. Just remember that any information that you post is now out there for the world to see. Lastly, social media is meant for us to connect with one another, especially now that we're in a virtual environment due to COVID-19. It shouldn't be about competition or envying someone else's lifestyle. That brings us to the final topic, self-awareness. In order to successfully adult in work, relationships, social media, and so on, you need to know and take care of yourself. Retsuko always puts her own feelings and needs last, and that's why she needed an outlet through death metal karaoke. It's okay to get upset, or feel sad, or lack motivation, but if you recognize what's bothering you, you can do something about it. One example of addressing your feelings and needs is having alone time. It seems like such a simple thing to do, but it can be hard when you feel obligated to spend your time with other people or needing to work all the time. However, It's when Retsuko spent her time away from other characters and work that she was able to come to a better understanding of herself. Continuing on that note, incorporate self-care in your routine. Besides karaoke, Retsuko also takes up yoga and meets two of her closest friends, Washimi and Gori, there. I'll mention sleeping as well, because I know that's usually the first thing I cut back on when I'm pressed for time. Next, as an adult, you're expected to be independent. Retsuko learns how to drive, and she's absolutely elated and empowered by having the freedom associated with that. I'm not saying that you have to drive, although in the US that's certainly helpful, but find things that make you feel that way. Demonstrate that you can stand on your own. Similarly, financial independence is a major part of adulting. At the basic level, it means having a source of income to cover your expenses. Following the basics, you'll need to start saving up for future life expenses, car, house, family, retirement, etc., depending on your own criteria. While Retsuko is burned out at her job and dreams of marrying so she doesn't have to work, she recognizes that she needs her salary. You can't rely on others, like family or significant other, to cover your expenses. As the saying goes, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. My last point is the importance of having self-confidence. Hopefully, if you follow the advice discussed during this presentation, you'll be on your way. Retsuko and her fellow characters demonstrate their own personal growth journeys throughout the series. Here are my references in order of use. Now it's time to hear from you, the audience. What questions do you have? Do you have any Aggretsuko stories in real life? And thanks for joining us today.